My ADHD wife and I had an active sex life, but after our child, intimacy plummeted to zero. I became overwhelmed, seeking help. Hello. I am a 37-year-old male and have been married to my wife, who is 40 years old and diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, for nearly 9 years, together for about 15 years. To summarize, I am experiencing emotional exhaustion. My wife, who has ADHD, tends to be inattentive, has a virtually non-existent libido, and places most or all of the parenting and household responsibilities on my shoulders. Her ADHD and fatigue are often cited as reasons for neglecting basic tasks. I am seeking guidance on how to move forward or additional aspects I should take into account. Warning: long post. I sincerely hope the length of this post does not cause issues with the moderators, as I am in dire need of advice and perspectives from others who have partners with ADHD regarding the current state of my marriage. I have attempted to include as much detail as possible so that I can effectively communicate our situation to all of you. I apologize if this appears somewhat disorganized. I am striving to present my thoughts clearly. I welcome feedback and comments from everyone, regardless of their background. If anyone is in a relationship with a spouse who has ADHD, I would love to hear your perspective. Additionally, I would appreciate insights from women over the age of 39 who might relate to my wife's experience. Before I delve into the details, I would like to highlight a few important points. My wife was diagnosed with ADHD in 2021, shortly after the birth of our child. There were early signs, but they were not overly concerning. She also suffers from a sleep disorder linked to her ADHD, for which she is receiving medication. As a result, she is constantly fatigued. The pregnancy itself was quite challenging. She underwent a cesarean section and the removal of a cyst from one of her ovaries. The ovary remains intact. The birth occurred during lockdown, so I was only able to be present during the initial hours she was in the hospital, where she remained for 3 to 4 days. She took a full year of maternity leave and has since returned to work 3 days a week. Before having children, she worked full-time and did not struggle to maintain her job like some individuals with ADHD. She has a history of depression and anxiety and is on a very low dosage of medication to manage these conditions. Now, on to the core of the matter. Since the birth of our child, our sex life has faced numerous challenges within our marriage. I want to clarify that I have never expected things to return to pre-child levels. Life is unpredictable, and I understand that pregnancy and postpartum can take a significant toll in this area. However, I am now at a point where I am genuinely worried about how things are progressing. Before becoming parents, we had a highly active sexual life. I am referring to a very enthusiastic experience, with multiple encounters throughout the day and entire weekends dedicated to intimacy. Her sleep disorder rarely interfered, and while her ADHD traits were present, they were largely managed. Following the pregnancy, everything changed dramatically. In fact, the situation has become quite concerning, and it is not limited to intimacy. To break things down, in the first year, sex was understandably challenging. I chose not to discuss it or pressure her because I believed she needed time to heal and was likely grappling with some postpartum issues. We had sexual encounters a few times, amounting to approximately 20 instances for the entire year. During that year, she received her diagnosis and began consuming ADHD-related content online. This was when she embraced the narrative that ADHD is a superpower. In the second year, progress was slow. I faced rejection 90% of the time. We showed some improvement after I initiated discussions on the topic, but the situation still wasn't satisfactory. By the third year, we experienced some recovery, with sexual activity occurring every 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes more often, sometimes less. Although I still faced frequent rejections, things were gradually improving. Year 4 last year began with some positive momentum, and I felt hopeful that we would return to a better place. However, around April or May, I began to notice significant changes, and things quickly deteriorated. Our child transitioned to full-time preschool, and I had hoped this would provide her with some mental space. It was supposed to give her a day for herself to engage in activities of interest or focus. Surprisingly, it has not made any difference. During the rare sexual encounters between January and April, I noticed she began to disconnect from me, appearing distracted and uninterested. It was as if the encounters felt like a task rather than an intimate experience. Rejections became more frequent and more blunt, lacking sensitivity. In May, I reached a point where I informed her I would not initiate any sexual activity unless she made an effort. This led to an emotional meltdown on her part, but honestly, I felt too devastated to tread lightly around the subject anymore. At that moment, I needed some distance due to the emotional pain I was experiencing. I lost about 25 to 30 kilograms. I'm in the best physical shape of my life right now, but this has gone unnoticed. Between May and November, she initiated intimacy only a handful of times. Her efforts during these encounters ranged from inadequate to mediocre. At one point, I even stopped because I could sense she was not interested. November marked the last time we engaged in any sexual activity, which I recall being merely satisfactory. Around that time, she dealt with a cyst that required treatment with antibiotics. Initially, I felt skeptical, associating her cyst or infection with the lack of sexual engagement and wondering about the possibility of infidelity. I approached the topic cautiously, and she denied any wrongdoing. She was later diagnosed with bursitis, which I have accepted for now. Do I suspect she has been unfaithful? I'm unsure, probably not. The odd part is that since then, there has been a complete lack of intimacy. I attempted to initiate contact in January, but again faced rejection. Throughout much of January, she was intensely focused on an event she was organizing, so I let that go. However, since then, there has been a continued absence of intimacy. I have cautiously approached this topic a few times, trying my best to sidestep any potential landmines related to her rejection's sensitive dysphoria, with mixed results. Delving into this subject is difficult as I cannot obtain a clear response from her. In her own words, she claims to have no libido whatsoever. She still finds me attractive, but lacks any desire for sexual engagement. She acknowledges that my unhappiness troubles her. Last year, she underwent blood tests to check her hormone levels, which came back normal. She is convinced she is perimenopausal. I do not know if that is the case, but it is uncertain. She has been persistently suggesting seeing a sex therapist for the past 6 weeks, yet she will not allow me to schedule an appointment. According to her, she is on a waiting list. I'm not sure how truthful that is. Now, let me provide you with a couple more facts about our dynamic. Again, I want to ensure you have all the relevant details. In terms of parenting, her hyperfocus has been on gentle parenting, a philosophy I do not subscribe to, which frustrates her greatly. Nonetheless, I rarely raise my voice and have never physically punished our child. I believe in teaching lessons through actions and consequences, rather than through authoritarian methods. Another hyperfocus has been on acquiring toys, resulting in our home occasionally becoming excessively cluttered. This situation is gradually improving. Additionally, she became intensely involved with other mothers in our social circle and local clubs, comparing children and pregnancy experiences. She became particularly attached to one mother from our area, who has since relocated. Despite all of this, parenting dynamics in our household are quite unusual. She is a fantastic mother. However, she struggles with the less enjoyable responsibilities of parenting. I often find myself taking on the disciplinary role and setting limits, as she simply will not. Throughout the initial 2 years, I handled approximately 60% of the bedtimes and nighttime awakenings. I do not know if this is linked to her ADHD, but she has struggled to settle our child, resulting in my frequent involvement in this area. Since February 2022, I have managed every single bedtime, aside from a handful of instances where circumstances required my absence. This aspect of our arrangement is no longer considered a job for me. I simply wanted to emphasize this point since her continuous exhaustion is often used as a rationale for avoiding chores, intimacy, or even basic tidying. I want to be clear that I am the default parent. She sleeps in every weekend without fail, often rising around 11 a.m. or noon and requiring additional naps in the afternoon. I handle the parenting responsibilities and frequently take our child out for afternoons or days, allowing her ample time for her own interests. Household responsibilities, like in many ADHD-affected households, largely fall to the neurotypical partner. I undertake an excessive amount, more than in an average marriage. I work a demanding full-time job, exceeding 40 hours a week in a senior-level, high-stress role. Naturally, her ADHD leads to disarray, and I am responsible for managing it. Currently, there are 4 areas of clutter and 2 storage spaces I am not permitted to organize, as doing so would risk triggering her rejection's sensitive dysphoria. Where do we stand now? My post history will reveal more insight into my situation, but more recently, things have not been great, obviously. We have gone over 100 days since our last intimate experience. Non-sexual intimacy is somewhat tolerable, but I cannot shake the feeling that it is merely annoying her or distracting her from whatever her current hyperfocus may be. Communication is extremely challenging. She makes every effort to avoid discussing difficult topics. I have even suggested a weekly couples check in using an online resource. We have conducted one so far, but she avoided the check-in last night. It is essential for her to seek therapy, yet I see no progress in that regard. Meltdowns related to her rejection, sensitive dysphoria, have become more inevitable. If she hears anything that isn't overwhelmingly positive, she perceives me as an angry monster. We have access to childcare, a cleaner, and are financially stable. Well, I am financially stable. I cannot stress this enough. Life stressors are not significantly affecting us. As for my situation, I am currently nearing burnout from managing the household, parenting, and working while picking up the pieces. I have even taken a day off from work to reflect on the past few months. I can no longer find pleasure in viewing images of her, as they genuinely break my heart. I had to delete them. I continue to invest so much effort with so little gratitude. I feel tearful, sad, and full of resentment. Yet, despite all this, I am in the best physical shape of my life. I look good and know that I contribute more than most individuals would. Still, I feel utterly miserable at this point. So, my fellow Redditors, do you have any advice or insights? Please do not hesitate to speak up. If you feel I need to be the one to work on things, please sayit. I am open to all forms of feedback and criticism. That was quite a lot to write. I will respond to comments. Thank you all in advance. Story 2. Sister gave away our childhood LPS collection without asking, claiming she forgot about them. Now, I mourn my lost childhood treasures. So, here is some context. When my sister and I were young, we had containers filled with littlest pet shop figurines, and they represented a significant part of our fondest memories. We named each one and gave them distinct personalities. If you are not already aware, littlest pet shop items are now considered collector's items, sometimes valued in the hundreds. Even if I wished to replace them today, it would likely cost me thousands. However, nothing could substitute for the small marker smudges and the rubbed-off paint from our little fingers that hold sentiment. As adults, we had 2 large Ziploc bags remaining. When my mother divorced my father and they sold the house, I asked my dad to retrieve them from the box for me so I could make sure they would not be lost during the relocation. Temporarily, until we were settled elsewhere, I stayed with my sister in her apartment. Since her new place was also cluttered with boxes and items constantly going to the thrift store, I chose to leave the collection with her. After all, they belonged to both of us. I made sure to tell her that if she ever wanted to part with them, she should let me know, and I would hold on to them. I recall jokingly mentioning this once or twice, expressing my hope that she had not sold them, but she never responded. The truth is, I was honestly too afraid to press for the reality of the situation at that moment. I was going through a lot, which I won't delve into, so I chose to remain hopeful rather than focus on it. Now, it has been 4 years. There was a significant period during which my sister ceased communication with me. She decided to block everyone once she started talking to my mother again. That's another lengthy story. I finally learned the truth. Here are the texts. Me, I hope you still have the littlest pet shops. Sister, this is silly, but my boyfriend has a little cousin who genuinely loves Barbies and small figurines, and they don't have much money, so I gave her our childhood bag, hoping she would play with them and love them as they deserve. Me, sad, but I suppose it's valid. It makes me uneasy and gives me a sinking feeling. Sister, I know, I just didn't want to auction off our childhood for money that would eventually be spent. Me, I wish you'd asked me, but I bet that was during the time we weren't talking. Sister, no, it was shortly after you went to live with the grandparents when our parents split. Me, no way, right after I entrusted them to you to keep safe. I could cry, girl. Sister, I know I shouldn't have. I was in a lot of emotional turmoil, to be honest. I just didn't want to look at them because they reminded me of us when our lives weren't such a mess. Me. There's nothing you can do about it now, but deep down, I wish you had returned them to me. Sister, I could have sworn our mom gave those to me. Am I mistaken? Me, no, I did. I was worried they would get lost while I was moving. Her, I wish my memory were better. Me, it's okay, I shouldn't have given them to you. It's my mistake, not yours. You were free to do what you wanted. But now I am mourning my childhood toys. Her, oh, well, you never asked for them back or checked on them. Honestly, I forgot I even had them or gave them away. It has been about 3 or 4 years. Me, I'm just upset. I'm not angry with you, so please don't be dismissive. Her, no, for sure, I understand. I'm just surprised at how sad it's making me feel. It feels as if I did something wrong. I wouldn't give anything away without someone saying, "Hey, hold on to these for me. I'll collect them from you at some point." I know for certain I would never do that, so it wasn't done out of malice or secretly disposing of something. I'm sorry they are no longer with me, but at least they are still loved. Me, I know you forgot and that's okay, but I did give them to you to keep safe because I was moving. I stayed with you briefly while we were relocating and didn't want them to be lost. I love that they are cherished. They were loved by me. I just assumed they were still somewhere I could retrieve them. I have mentioned them in the past, but honestly, I was hesitant to bring it up in case they were gone. Hearing that they are indeed lost is making me emotional because my childhood toys are no longer here. No, you did nothing wrong. I wish you'd talk to me about it, but that's not something we can resolve, nor am I angry at you for it. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm allowed to have my feelings about it, though. I feel as though you are upset with me for having a reaction. Her, no, I think this is just a topic on which we won't agree, but that's okay. I'm fine moving on. An hour later, I still felt uneasy about how the conversation ended, so I consulted some friends and returned with this very calm text, hoping she would try to acknowledge my feelings. Me. I understand that you did not intend to hurt me, but this situation still mattered greatly to me, and I wish you could have acknowledged that instead of shutting the conversation down. I always try to be considerate of your feelings, and I would truly appreciate the same in return. Her, I'm not sure what is happening, but you have been somewhat fabricating something from nothing. I validated you, but understand that it is not my duty to do so when I don't entirely agree with your portrayal of my actions. I am allowed to feel that way. As I said, it's okay to disagree on how a situation unfolded and who gave what to whom, because that is quite a guessing game since I have a different perspective on the details. This is fine. However, I dislike the notion of making someone uncomfortably feel bad inadvertently. I don't like being made to feel that way when I don't deserve it. Honestly, I do not have the energy to continue texting about this. I'm okay with avoiding it if needed. To be candid, this isn't the first instance where she has struggled with healthy communication with me. Our mother is a narcissist, or at least that is what my therapist suggests, and I believe it is possible my sister has inherited some of her traits. So far, she has informed me that she does not want me coming to her with my problems since she has enough of her own, yet she has no issue discussing her issues with me. Told me about speaking to my father behind my back concerning my gender identity and suggesting I should not be upset with him for consistently refusing to use my pronouns, which I was never angry about. He just assumed that was my issue and approached her. She also expressed that he comes from another era, so it shouldn't matter, he is in his 50s. Acted strangely in a racially insensitive manner in public. It's tough to elaborate. She has admitted she is working on it, but sometimes I must look her in the eyes and directly tell her she is acting poorly. Even though she refuses to accept it from me, if one of her friends calls her out, she apologizes. Claimed to have acted as a mother to me during my upbringing, yet she was one of my most significant bullies during my formative years. Ceased communication with me because I refused to provide her boyfriend with free artwork. I'm a freelance artist. Expressed anger at me for having a differing opinion about my father's new girlfriend. So the question is, how do I move forward? Should I keep her at a distance? Should I take a break from her? Should I establish boundaries? What boundaries would you recommend with a person like this? I come from a challenging family dynamic, and I have been striving to improve my relationships with those who are still present, Yet I have no experience with a healthy family dynamic. None of my friends have one, and none of my extended family does either.